and will introduce each action item, discussion item, and information item prior to the board's discussion and voting. And then just a quick reminder to everyone to please keep your mics muted if you are not speaking. And also, if you are have comments to make during public voice sessions, that we do ask that you state your name and the county in which you are coming from, especially for constables. And I'm not sure if we have John Bruno on the call yet. Hi, good morning, John Bruno.
Hey, Sherry, why don't we do at least a roll call of the board and PCCD? Oh,
Morning.
There's John.
Hello there.
Morning, John.
Sorry about that. I'm in court here today, so I'm like juggling a bunch of balls, but I'm out now and I'm ready to go. So anyhow, it is 9 o'clock, and welcome everybody. We'll begin the meeting. Before, of course, I begin, I want to notify everybody that the meeting is being recorded at this time. Does anybody have an objection? No objections? Okay, I'll try to control the flow of this meeting, and my job is to introduce the action items and moderate the discussions and all the informal items to the board discussion and the votings. That's what my job is going to be. So I just ask everybody to, when you are speaking, to speak loudly and speak clearly throughout the meeting. But if you're not speaking, please put your phones on mute. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. At this time, we'll have a call to order, and I would like to take a roll call. So I'll begin with me, then we'll go to down the rest of the board. So I am John Bruno, Chairman, and I am present today, February 11th, 2021. Next up, please. Bud, are you there?
Oh, Bud Bites. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Craig Westover, are you there?
Craig Westover, present.
Okay. Just go down the line, please. Do we have the major from the state police?
Yes, I'm present.
Okay. Any other board members available that I did not recognize? Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Tricia Norwood-Foden. I'm the newest member on the board.
Yes, I'm about to introduce you. So welcome.
Thank you.
I understand that you were nominated and confirmed on November 19th, 2020. Very briefly, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the Constable Education and Training Board?
Sure. Well, welcome to those of you who I'm new, so thank you for your welcome. So my name is Tricia Norwood-Foden. I'm the court administrator for Chester County. I've actually just celebrated my 30th anniversary with the court system. I started many, many years ago out in the MDJ offices and kind of worked my way up through the ranks until I became the DCA of the county. I've had a lot of interest in and actually a lot of participation in constable issues, beginning with all of the work I did in the MDJ offices, and was a part of the Chester County's efforts for our constable handbook back in 2002. I believe we started that process. And I also was a part of the statewide effort from the AOPC for their constable handbook. So I'm very familiar with constable issues, and I'm really happy to be a part of this because I recognize the importance of the constables to the judiciary. I know here in Chester County, you know, we count on their services every single day to keep us operational. So I'm happy to be a part of this group.
Welcome, and you know, we'll certainly need you, and I'm sure John and Sherry have brought you up to speed on the struggles that we've been having in terms of funding our continuing education going forward here. So hopefully you'll be able to give us some good advice and guidance on that as well. Also present today in the meeting are the PCC staff. Who from the CCD staff is present? Can you please state your names?
I'll go ahead and start, John. This is Sherry Leffler. I'm the supervisor of the Constables Education and Training Program at PCCD.
And this doesn't run without you, Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks.
And this is John Fow. I'm the manager of the Bureau of Training Services, which houses the Constable Training Program.
I'll echo those remarks to you as well, John. Thanks for all you do.
This is Megan Staub. Sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
Tracy Beaver, PCCD program staff.
Megan Staub, curriculum manager for constables and deputies.
Okay, great. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
Oh, that's okay. Nick Hartman, program staff as well.
Good morning, everyone. This is Sally Barry. I'm the director of the Office of Justice Programs, and the Bureau of Training Services falls under the Office of Justice Programs here at PCCD.
Good morning, everyone. Deborah Sandifer here, Chief Counsel.
Good morning, Deborah.
And this is Diane Morgan. I'm Associate Counsel.
Morning, Ms. Morgan.
Good morning, Beth Romero, in the Fiscal Management Office.
Morning.
Good morning, Yvonne Murray, also with Fiscal Management and Administration.
Morning.
I think that's it for PCC. Yep, that's it for the PCCD staff. Thanks, John.
PCC staff. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody here on this snowy winter morning. Now, anybody in the audience today that would like to introduce themselves?
Constable Dave Kneller, Kneller from Lebanon County.
Morning, sir.
Constable Ron Quinn, Center County.
Morning, sir.
Constable Sean Vincent, Vinson, President of CCA, Lancaster County.
Constable Mike Hammer, Bucks County Constable Association Vice President.
Morning, sir.
Thank you.
Alex Ferganis, Lancaster County, President of Lancaster County Constable Association.
Morning, Alex.
Good morning, John.
Constable.
Good morning,
Constable Wakefield out of West Conshohocken.
Good morning, Constable Wakefield.
I'll go
Good
back.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm retired Constable Ron Clever, a solicitor for the PAFOC.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. This is Constable Savage from Montgomery County and also Vice President of the Pennsylvania State Constables Association.
Morning.
Terry White, York County.
Good morning, Mr. White.
Constable Todd Rich, Montgomery County.
Morning, Mr. Rich.
Good morning, Michael Lewis, Dauphin County.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning, sir.
Any other constables or interested members in the audience available?
Dee Biter, Constable Training Coordinator, Temple University.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Tony Luongo, Temple University.
Morning, Mr. Luongo.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tony Muhawk, Constable, Education Coordinator, Penn State Jazzy.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Steve Shiloh, also from Penn State Jazzy.
Morning. Anybody else? We got a full boat. Hearing no other introductions, we're going to move along to the action items. Let's see. I will introduce each action items, then I'll ask the board members to make a motion to approve, and of course, a second motion to approve. And just remind you to state your name for the record before each motion. The first action item is the unapproved minutes of November 19, 2020 meeting. And Sherry?
Yes, as far as the draft minutes of the November 19th, 2020 meeting, do any of the board members have any changes or deletions, additions to those minutes?
Sherry, Constable Westover. The only thing I would have is on page 4, fourth paragraph down, it would be the fourth sentence. Referred to Blair Cole, it's Laird, L-A-I-R-D, Laird Cole. I see later in the minutes he was referred to again. It was correct on the second time around, but that's the only correction I saw that needed to be made.
Okay, we'll make sure that that correction gets made before they are finalized.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the board minutes of November 19th, 2020 as recorded?
I'll make that motion. Bud Fights.
Yes, please. State your name. Thank you. And do I have a second?
Craig Westover will second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, John
Aye.
Bruno.
Aye,
Any
Craig Westover.
nays?
Aye, Pike.
Any
Aye,
nays?
Tricia Norwood.
No nays? Motion approved. Okay. Is there any public comment at all on those minutes from last November? Okay. Moving on to the second action item is the unapproved financial report for February 11, 2021. And for that, we will go to Yvonne and to Beth. Show is yours.
Good morning, everyone. This is the financial report for second quarter of 2020-2021. These are found on pages 10 through 15. So under page 10, under your receipts, you will find the balance carried forward from the previous fiscal year was $2,161,76.15. Now, the fees that were collected through the second quarter were $543,798.46. That leaves the total funds available as of December 31st, 2020, which is our second quarter, as $2,704,874.61. Now, under your expenditures and commitments, that's also on page 10, your total cumulative expenditures as of December 31st are $360,966.60. Your total cumulative expenditures and commitments as of December 31st, 2020 was $2,277,698.12, which does include $357,548.40 in administrative expenditures and commitments. That breakdown is also on your page 10 here. So that at the end here, the total uncommitted funds as of December 31st, 2020 for your second quarter is $427,176.49. And that is your bottom line at page 10.
Okay. Anything else on that, Yvonne or Beth? No?
I am good, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask, is there any discussion among the board members regarding the financial report as presented at this time? And remember, please state your name.
Craig Westover will make a motion to approve it as presented.
We have a motion from Craig Westover. Do I have a second?
Bud Pikes, I'll second that.
Second from Bud Pikes. Let's vote on that. All in favor, say aye. John Bruno, aye.
Craig Westover,
Bud
aye.
Pikes, aye.
George
Bud
Bivens,
Pikes.
aye.
Tricia Norwood Bowden, aye.
All right. Are there any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing no abstentions, hearing no nays. The motion is approved. We have any comment from the audience on the approved financial report of February 11,
Chairman
2021?
Bruno, this is John Fow. Constable Westover at the last meeting had asked about, the program pays a portion of rent for the building that we're in there at PCCD. Of course, we haven't been in the building. Staff's been working from home since this started. So he did, ask about, we're going to get a cut in the rent or a break in the rent. Mike Pennington, the executive director, he was on the last call, and he said he would look into it. He's not available today, but he did ask me to pass on to the board that obviously PCCD, the constables program, is not the only program. There's a lot of programs that pay rent, so they're actually going to be looking at the overall lease agreement the agency has for the building, because we know going forward some form of telework may be available to staff on all the various programs. So I know he's working with Darren Myers, who's the head of the fiscal, to take a look at the lease agreement and see what can be done if we reduce space or size of staff or whatever. So he doesn't have a definitive answer, but he thought that was a very good point brought up, and not just this program, but all the programs at PCCD.
Okay. Any comment from the board or from the
Craig Westover. John, I do appreciate you looking into that for me. And like I said, I just don't want to come across as being a miser, but, financially with the program, I was looking at any cuts that we can make in order to help. And it looks like we are bouncing back positively on the projections, everything. Things look a lot better than what they did. I got to tell you, when I come on board 3 years ago. So I appreciate, any dimes that we can save anywhere across the board, but just let Mike know I didn't want to come across as a miser. I'm just, just looking after the program, and I appreciate that.
No, he understands, and unfortunately, Craig, we kind of are at that point. We got to save money anywhere we can. So he did appreciate it, and so he's looking into it. Like I said, not just our program, but pretty much the whole agency, and see what comes out of it. So thanks.
any other comments or discussions on that matter from the audience or from the board? Okay, hearing none. Of course, our motion is approved. We'll go on to the third action item, which is Act 233, stipend payments for training year 2020. And with that, I will refer to Sherry Leffler.
Thanks, John. At the November meeting, I believe it was Judge Berletic had asked the question of how many people would be eligible if we did decide to do an Act 233 payment for training year 2020 and what that payment would look like. So provided on page 16 of the board packet, I went through the normal, write up for the Act 233, but on page 17, I got into some of the nitty gritty details that were requested by Judge Berletic. So basically, what I did is I looked at the average round trip distance that we had paid in the past for the stipend payments, and that came out to 50 miles. Per the Management Directive 230.10, it does not allow for a standard per diem rate for non-overnight travel. There are different exceptions that are put into place. For example, an employee must travel more than 50 miles from their headquarters to receive an $8 meal allowance, or if they work 2 hours past their regular shift time and they were given less than 2 hours notice, then they get an $8 meal allowance. However, neither of these exceptions would apply to constables attending annual Con Ed training because it's only for one day and they would not be in an overnight status. Based upon that, I did take the round trip mileage of 50 miles and took that times the personal mileage rate, again, consistent with the current ground travel worksheet that is done by the travel units and also guidance from the same Management Directive 230.10. So taking that, if we would allow the $8 meal allowance and the 16 cents a mile, the reimbursement is really only going to come out to about $16 for those constables. And out of the 953 active and certified constables who would normally be potentially eligible for this payment in 2020, we only had 310 that would be eligible due to all the COVID-related, cancellations of training classes. So in saying that, if we had the 310 that would be eligible in 2020 times the $16 rate per constable, the payment out would be for around approximately $4,960. However, this does create some issues for staff and other Commonwealth agencies. On May 21st of last year, we were advised that the payment interface that we previously had with the comptroller's office to process these Act 233 payments was deactivated due to inactivity because we had not processed any payments since 2009. So that would require additional work on our IT developer to reactivate this in the SET system, as well as the work that would be involved with integrating back with the comptroller's office for that as well. Also, those 310 constables would have to file a W-9 form that would have to be processed through our vendor management unit for assignment of an SAP number so that they could make that payment out to them. Again, that would be additional work both on staff and also vendor management unit. And then the last paragraph on page 17, I put in some of the, dollar figures for the fee collections, the fund balance, those types of things. And again, I know you all can read this, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But again, staff are recommending that due to the small percentage of constables that would be eligible for the stipend payment, also the added work for also both program staff, our IT staff, and also other state agencies, and still considering the current status of the account, staff are requesting the board's approval to not pay an Act 233 payment for training year 2020. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments from the board?
And you prepared this as a request from Judge Berletic.
That's correct.
Okay. Is Judge on the call this morning?
He was unable to join us. He had court duties today.
Oh, okay. All right then. All right, great. Sherry, as always, excellent job in doing such a, thorough deep dive into that for us. Okay. Let's do it this way. Nothing from the from the board or anything from the audience on Sherry's presentation on the stipend payments?
John Bruno, John Bruno, this is
Yeah.
Craig Westover. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the inventory list that was given out to us under discussion items. So when you get down to that part, the next section here on the agenda, I definitely want to talk about the equipment inventory. But I wanted to comment on this Act 233 stipend payments. I'm still financially not comfortable at this point, spending any additional money out of the program. I'm looking at the projections that we have on page 15. It looks like by year 24-25, we're going to be up fairly close to where we were sometime between the 15-16 and 16-17 fiscal year. And I'd be more comfortable, entertaining this discussion about stipend payments once we've got our, fund balance built back up to where we were, around the 2016 era. So I'm hoping that at this point it kind of answers some questions, and that maybe this situation can be left off the table at least until we get out about that same amount of money in the bank account. And that's my comment on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, this is Tricia. Question about if there's going to be a projected, anticipated payment, within the next few years, and listening to Sherry describe all of the different coordination through, or just through, I guess, the different case management systems, or however it is that you can actually accomplish that payment. Is there any plan to maybe phase out or phase in the ability to make these payments without a huge impact on, on the way to do that? If it's going to cost, or just at least the coordination with the other agencies. Is there any kind of anticipated plan to be able to accomplish that instead of having to react to it when you're back in this position to make that payment?
This is John Fow. What I would say to that, I think, kind of to tag on to what Craig Westover said, if the board is, feeling that the fiscal situation is improving and are kind of looking forward, that say, hey, in a year or two or whatever, we can start making those payments again, then we could start working on that coordination ahead of time. One of the key issues that Sherry mentioned is that work by our IT developer, and Eric, he maintains the SET system as well as the deputy sheriff system. And right now, his biggest focus is integrating all the online training so that we're automatically receiving grades, and we know the status of somebody if they've completed an online course and registration. And that's kind of a big lift right now for him. Plus, there were a lot of temporary changes we had to make in our system due to all the training cancellations and the unique circumstances of 2020. So I think if the board is starting to head in that direction, we could probably, start that coordination ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other comment or discussion on the stipend payments?
John, this is
Hearing
Sherry.
none.
John, this is
Go
Sherry
ahead, Sherry.
Leffler. Just as an informational item for Tricia, this does the Act 233. We do bring this to the board on an annual basis. And so every year they would be taking a look at the financials and making that determination on an annual basis. So we would have enough lead time if the financial situation does improve in the future, we would have enough lead time to try to get that implemented again in the future. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Sherry. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the third action item, Act 233 stipend payments for training year 2020, as presented by Sherry Leffler?
This is Tricia
I'll make that
Norton.
motion.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second that. Mm-hmm. Okay, all in favor of this motion, say aye. John Bruno, aye.
Craig Westover, aye.
George Bivens, aye.
Bud Pike, aye.
Tricia Foden, aye.
Are there any nays? Are there any exceptions? Hearing none, vote is taken. Third action item is approved. Moving on to the fourth action item would be instructor certifications. And with that, we will go to Ms. Tracy Beaver. Tracy?
Thank you, John Bruno. This is Tracy. Good morning, everyone. You will see the instructor certifications for review starting on page 19 of the board packet. The first instructor for review and certification is from Temple, James Ellis Jr. He does not currently teach for the program, but he is requesting certification in topics of general and physical skills. He has met the board requirements to be approved for these topics, and staff recommend certification for James Ellis Jr. for the topics listed above. The second instructor is from Temple, Donald Murdoch. He also is not currently certified to teach for the program. He is requesting topics for general law, communications, and firearms. As you can see from his review there, he does meet the board requirements to be approved for those topics, and staff does recommend board certification for Donald Murdoch. The third instructor from Temple University is Christopher Sharamatu. I do apologize if I butchered that. He is also not currently certified with the program, but he is requesting certification for topics general, communications, physical skills, and firearms. And you can see also he has met the requirements for those 4 topics. Staff does recommend board certification for Christopher for the topics listed above. Also from Temple is a request for Alex Farganis. He is currently certified to teach general communications with MOAB attached to that, and also physical skills. He is requesting to be board certified in the firearms topic. He has met the training or the requirements for board certification, and staff does recommend that the board certify Alex Farganis in the firearms certification topic. And the last instructor certification is also from Temple, Ray Telnock. He is currently certified by the board in the general and physical skills topic. And he is also seeking board approval for firearms, for the firearms topic. He has met the board certification requirements, and staff does recommend board certification for Ray Telnock in the firearms topic.
Okay. Any discussion from the board members on any one of these gentlemen instructors putting forth their request to become teachers to the mini constables? Anything from the board? Okay. Any public comment on this action item?
I have a public comment. Dave Kneller. You have how many instructors that are looking for certification?
How many is that, Tracy? 5?
We have 5 total, 3 that are brand new and 2 that are currently certified requesting additional topics. This is Sherry.
So you have 5 total instructors looking for money from the PCC board, and only one, Alex Farganis, made time today to be part of this discussion. I just would like that noted.
It's not a requirement for the instructors to be present during
Oh, I
the board
understand.
meeting.
I understand.
Okay, so noted. Any other discussion or public comment on action item 4? Hearing none, I would like to make that motion. I'll be the one to make the motion. I will state all 5 names, and then I will request a second to my motion. I make a motion as for the recommendation of the staff to certify as instructors James Ellis Jr., Donald Murdoch, Christopher Shiramatu, Alexander Organis, and Raymond Telnock. Do I have a second on that motion?
Craig Westover will second it.
Are there any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
George Bivens, aye.
Craig Westover, aye.
Trish Bowden, aye.
Bud Fights, aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Fourth action item regarding instructor certification. Motion is approved. Moving on to let's see here, discussion item or facilitate this among the board members and staff. We have training years fiscal comparison, and I'll turn that one over to Mr. John Fow.
Thank you, Chair. And Sherry, I don't know if you have that document to put up. And this document was put out, given the current fiscal situation. I just asked fiscal to kind of put together a quick informal little chart to show what a normal training year, kind of this far along, what we would have expended under normal circumstances compared to 2020 with COVID and all the canceling of classes. As you can see, kind of in that first quarter, we did start out, we had con eds. I think we only had about 1 or 2 firearms classes, but we had several con eds. The year was starting out normally. And then, of course, in March, towards the end of that first quarter is when everything got closed down and canceled. So we spent about $23,000 less. But more significantly on that second quarter is the big jump. Normally, we're in the 173,000 range. We only spent about 42,000, and we don't have the third and fourth quarters yet because we're still in the process of closing out the 2 Penn State contracts that Penn State defaulted on back in February. So once we have that data, we'll kind of update this. But I thought it'd be important to show the board. I wouldn't say that 2020 gave us a savings. It just is kicking the whole fiscal situation down the road. I would say maybe it gave us a little more breathing room temporarily. So that was just kind of a quick informal comparison to give the board a snapshot, the impact of that 2020 training year.
Okay. Thank you, John. Next discussion item here, we're going to move on to Constable Gary Winfrey's training grievance. And with that, I will turn that over to Ms. Sherry Leffler.
Hi, this is Sherry again. We had at the last board meeting, Constable Winfrey had discussed his grievance during the public voice, and I did forward both his grievance that he had filed and the response back from program staff. Did the board have a chance to review that information, and are there any questions, discussion, comments?
Sure, this is Craig Westover. I read everything over. I read his original grievance. Just for a point of clarification, as I understand it, he has his address listed in Lewisberry, Pennsylvania. He says he's appointed as a deputy in Warrington Township. I guess the first thing was that we checked to make sure that that was even able to happen, because I know the deputy constables have to reside in the same election district. Did we quantify that?
Craig, this is John. I'll speak to this because this has come up, about constables or deputies holding office and not living in the borough or ward where they're holding office or appointed. And, quite frankly, that's at the county level to, make sure that they're eligible to hold office, et cetera. We've had, people come up and say, well, this guy doesn't live here. And we don't really have the means or the, it's not our role to then investigate and see if somebody is holding office and they're living in the same jurisdiction. I mean, it's a county level function to do that, to make sure that they're eligible, they're properly appointed or elected. So we take the election or appointment orders on face value from the county.
Okay. Well, I understand that. I guess I'm just, that's one of the things, especially out here in the West, we've had a bunch of issues, created over that whole situation. And but I don't know that all the counties are on the same page. That's the unfortunate part. I don't know where, where they get their information as to what they can do, what they can't, because I really feel some, out in the right field calls from folks that, from counties, and it's apparent that they really aren't that knowledgeable on the whole thing, but yet in other areas they are, because it's become a major issue. So, okay. As far as the training.
Craig, this is Sherry. If I could just add, I am
Sure.
looking at the appointment order, and it does specifically show his address at that Kunkel Mill Road in Lewisberry on the
Correct.
appointment order. And, and he does have his appointed constable's information there as well.
Yeah. I guess my major issue is the amount of time that had gone by, since he's been out of the system. I hate to open the gates here, with people, questioning, can I have an extra year? Can I have, and I think that our policy that we've had in place, I think we need to stick with it. I don't want to be hard-hearted, but on the other side of the coin, somewhere along the line, I got to draw the line as to what is, acceptable and what's not. And I'm just seeing a period of time here, that I feel is, too long for, for us to waiver that. That's my personal opinion, as a board member, but after reading the grievance over and looking at the information that he gave us on this, I just, I can't go along with doing any sort of extension.
John Bruno, here's Sherry. Yeah, I read the grievance as well. I have to echo what Craig said. Is Constable Winfrey, is he looking for us to give him a thumbs up or thumbs down today in some formal fashion?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Because he is trying, I mean, the new training year has started, so this is, holding him up from actually enrolling in, a basic firearms,
Okay.
if that's what the board decides based upon the grievance.
So do we need a motion and to put that to a vote, Sherry?
This is Bud Pites.
Hello, Bud.
Hi, I have to agree with Craig Westover, with what Craig already said. So I'm in agreement with Craig. And that's all I have to say about it.
Okay.
John, I mean, I would
Well,
suggest that, since this did get to the board level, that if they are going to reaffirm the decision that was made by program staff, that we probably should have a motion to affirm that decision.
All right then. Okay, then I'll make the motion to affirm the decision that we do not waive. Am I correct? You know, our current certification standing and deny Mr. Wintry his grievance. Is that acceptable motion?
Yes.
Craig West.
Okay.
Second motion.
Okay, all in favor of the board, say aye.
George Bivens, aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion has passed. We'll move on to the topic of LEOSA, the Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act. With that, I will turn that over to our distinguished counsel, Ms. Deborah Sandifer. Good morning, Ms. Sandifer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. As we know, and I've only been here 5 years, but questions about LEOSA have arisen over the years in different forms, different ways, and it tends to always come down to something that looks like people are seeking the board's assistance or intervention or advocacy to be recognized by that federal act and be in line to seek the privilege of extended privileges of carrying weapons that retired law enforcement officers have. The latest round of questions came in the form of whether or not this board can determine, decree, state, or whatever, that constables in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are, in fact, law enforcement officers. And the answer is no, they cannot. The first place to look is at the statute, the legislation that established this board, and it is clear, unequivocal, that this board was established for the purpose of education and training of constables. And it includes all the things that we all know that you know better than I do, including certification for firearms and the like. And we also know that the purpose is to enable constables to be able to present themselves to the judiciary where that is appropriate to serve on those or to serve and to perform services for those judiciary. When you look at LEOSA and it talks about this qualified retired law enforcement officer who would be eligible for this, it boils down into really two major points: the definition of a law enforcement officer, as well as proof of at least an aggregate of 10 years of employment as a law enforcement officer for a public agency. Both of those are things that this board is not qualified to delve into. Again, there's no empowerment in the statute that says this board can determine that constables are law enforcement officers. But also important is the fact that this board is not involved in the employment of constables. So this board would not be in a position to determine whether or not a constable had 10 years of service or any amount of service or employment. That would have to go to, since constables are independent contractors, it would have to go to whatever entity, and that would usually be on the county level, had provided some type of employment over time. There are other things to consider as well. One is that LEOSA is a federal act. This board is a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania entity. This is a state entity. Even if, and it does not, but even if the legislation permitted this board to make such a determination about constables being law enforcement officers, it's not necessarily the case that the federal entity who would approve an application through LEOSA would accept it. In a totally different context, this agency, PCCD, gets a lot of funding announcements and that sort of thing from the feds. And it happens from time to time that there are terms that are used to describe people who are eligible for grant money that are not defined. And we sit and we try to come up with something among ourselves. But the bottom line is when an entity uses a term and they do not define that term, the best place to go is back to that entity to, in fact, get a definition. And this has come up with constables, unfortunately, in many other situations, because there's no overarching sort of power or jurisdictional entity. It happens, and that's understandable that constables often come to this board for some of those issues, but it is not this board's responsibility to step in and to handle and answer the question for every issue that arises for a constable. This board is limited to education and training. Another way this question has come up in the past is, well, someone brought up a case. I think it was the state of New York versus Arthur Rodriguez. That case has absolutely no controlling value in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is a New York case. And for those who haven't heard about it or read it, it's a situation where a Pennsylvania constable would go into the state of New York to do some other work, construction or whatever. And he was arrested and charged with illegal possession of a weapon. It did happen that in the course of that criminal prosecution, the New York court said that, okay, we're going to dismiss these charges. We consider him law enforcement. He's fine. But again, that is a New York case. There is no case in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania which has determined that constables are law enforcement officers. So again, the question has come up year after year in different forms, but at this time, the answer is still the same. This board cannot decree that constables are law enforcement officers. I think that's basically all I had to say about the matter, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Hank, hold on one second, please. Yeah, I appreciate you looking into that. And LEOSA is, the intent of LEOSA is, I wholeheartedly agree with the intent of LEOSA. I believe it was an act that came out of the Bush administration and basically says that, for the good of the, communities and for, the United States, that it would be a great idea for trained law enforcement agents who are retired to maintain certification. It is good, and I agree with it 100%. It's just, how does that trickle down to constables? And I know for a fact there are many law enforcement, ex-law enforcement officers in the state of Pennsylvania that obtain their LEOSA carrying privileges by, through the Pennsylvania State Police. I don't know if there's any municipal police officers that, can conduct that, training and test as well. I think Alex Forganis could probably speak to that. But it seems to me that there's a couple of things that we as constables have to do if we want to be able to approach this. And it all comes down to, once again, as Ms. Sandiford said, there is no controlling definition of, still today, statutorily, of what a constable is. And that's something that, we need to work on. And of course, you have to have legislation. You have to have a bill. It's put forth in the legislature on that. That's where we're at in terms of, I think, LEOSA. So we have, we have some hurdles there to do. Now, perhaps in the future, and it also says, we're not attached to any agency. Well, that legislation then perhaps needs to, allow us as constables, once we're defined as law enforcement officers, to perhaps then, receive our LEOSA certification through our county sheriff. Because believe it or not, guys, and I hear this all the time, and I've been doing this for 31 years, we call ourselves state constables, but we're really not state constables because we are not elected on a statewide ballot. We may be able to serve papers across county lines, but we're more district constables. We're elected from a local municipality, and perhaps that's where our thinking needs to arise from and go from there in terms of our definition. But in any effect, the question was, does the board have the ability to issue LEOSA, and it does not. It's pretty much apples and oranges here. So I will save any discussion on this until we get to the public voice in the interest of moving on. And I would like to now, under discussion item, go to equipment inventory, and I'll turn that over to John and Sherry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is John Fow. And Sherry, I don't know if you can put up the Jazzy, that first-hand receipt, while I'm talking. So in February, we were notified by Penn State Fayette that they were opting out of the training delivery contract as well as the curriculum development contract. And also too, later in the year of 2020, we made a decision not to renew IUP's training delivery contract. So in all three cases, there was equipment that had been purchased through the program with the Education Training Fund monies. So staff set out to recover that equipment. And if you can kind of make it a little bigger, Sherry, that'd be great. And so every year, our training providers, anybody who has had a contract, we've done this since the beginning. We have them, we have kind of a format for an equipment inventory they have to turn in to us. It's every September. So we always have kind of a running tally of what equipment they've purchased and what they're using. Of course, over time, equipment needs to be replaced, and things like defensive tactics, the strike pads or red man suits, and some of those things, normal wear and tear. So as they dispose of things, they would have to notify us. So that comes off the inventory and our process. We have a memorandum we've had in place for a long time that they are to dispose of that through their university, property disposal programs. Of course, any money recouped from that comes back to the training fund. Usually it's not a lot because, you're talking about depreciated used items that we're not getting top dollar for because of the wear and tear. So I want to kind of give that as a background. Sherry and I spent 2 days out recovering equipment for the two contracts from Penn State Fayette. And then in about 2 weeks later, this was both in November, we were at IUP recovering the training equipment there. I will also say that between the two schools, we recovered about 144 rounds of ammunition, that the programs had purchased over time. We used to provide training ammunition for the annual firearms training. Of course, that stopped with the change to the show and shoot. Now we're only providing ammunition for the firearms basic. With that said, there was a lot of equipment we came across that should have been disposed of much, several years ago. I will say, and Craig Westover, you were on the board back in the early 2000s. You remember we had 6 training providers. We had 6 training regions and 6 training providers. 5 of those 6 were Act 120 training providers. And I would say that some of the equipment we came across that our program never used, I think we might have picked up over time some old Act 120 equipment. For example, there were old straight wood batons and PR-24s. We never trained constables with those. When we did start baton and OC training, we started right away with, the expandable baton. So there were a lot of things on those inventory, not a lot, there are things on the inventory list that are being surplused. We worked, because then back in December, Sherry and I and Nick Hartman from the program, we went back and sorted through all this equipment a second time and determined what's serviceable, what's not. Excuse me. And also, too, there was some equipment, again, that, like I said, the program we never used to train constables. So some of that's going to be surplus, and some we're going to transfer to the deputy sheriff program. Of course, they'll pay the constable program for that. We already transferred about 20,000 rounds of 40 millimeter ammunition to them. They paid us fair market value, about $4,800 for that. Deputy sheriff program is also experiencing a difficulty in getting ammunition, so we thought we would shift some to try and get them through their current training period. And with that, I'll turn it over. I know, Craig, you said you had some questions.
Yeah, John, I did. So specifically, this equipment, the majority of the equipment on this list, am I right? Is it up at Penn State Jazzy? Is that where it's actually located at now? Or, because it looked to me there's some stuff might be out of Temple. How's this work on this inventory sheet?
Sure. So there were 3 sheets I sent you. One was Penn State Jazzy. A lot of that was training delivery type equipment. And then there was also what I would call some excess. There was more than what they needed, mainly like some handcuffs, transport belts. I think some of those kind of DT prisoner transport items. Penn State indicated, or I'm sorry, Temple indicated they could use some more of those type items, some red guns. So we're transferring that stuff over to Temple. They have not picked that up yet. They still have to coordinate that. And then there was curriculum development equipment that Penn State had, and Temple is now our curriculum developer. So that was that 3rd sheet, and that tended to be a lot of what I would call IT equipment. There was some cameras, for taking pictures for curriculum. There was computers. There was some CD burners, like Penn State had several CD towers when we used to give the constables a take-home CD at training. And again, in the future, we're going to have to help Temple go through that to determine what that equipment is serviceable, how much they need. Now that we're shifting to online training, we're probably not going to need a lot of that equipment. So probably a lot of that equipment could be surplus as well to try and recoup some funds.
Okay, on page 2 of 6, just looking at the inventory sheets, the very top one, I guess my question is these OC training spray kits with cables. I know with laser shot units we have those. Are any of those at all working with any of the systems? I mean, the ones, the units that I've used, I have not had OC training, the spray units being able to hook up with the computer and actually work. I mean, do we have any of those workable across the state?
And I couldn't tell you that, Craig. I don't know if anybody from Temple, if D, you can comment. I know the OC and the flashlight component of the laser shot has been hit or miss, I will say.
Yeah,
That
D,
is correct.
okay. D, do you have any OC out there that's working?
We have inert OC. We have not used live OC to train in a while.
Okay. All right. Well, then on down that same page, we have those 10 by 10 canopies, and I guess those were purchased for like some of these ranges with the summer heat and all that. You anticipate getting those like split up between Jazzy and Temple, or what was your thoughts on those canopies, John?
We talked with Temple about all the equipment that was there, and they didn't indicate, like I said, really the only thing they indicated they needed was some of that defensive tactics, prisoner transport equipment. I mean, we did discuss this with Temple. Hey, what do you need? Et cetera. And those were the only items they were really said they had a need for, some red guns and that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Well, but they know the door's open. I mean, if they're looking for that kind of stuff, we have it available, correct?
Correct. And what I would say to you, Craig, too, is as Penn State, gets into the training year, I'm sure as Tony, training locations and working with the instructors, I'm sure there might be other equipment that gets sorted out that Penn State Jazzy doesn't need. We'll check with Temple. If they don't need it, then we'll surplus it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hey, on page 4, I noticed that December 2020, you purchased a Dell laptop computer and a Lexmark printer. Was that for in the office, or where was that for?
Sherry, if you remember, I know you handle the invoices. I don't remember.
Yeah, that was used. That was a replacement for an employee at Penn State Fayette
Okay.
to their dismissal.
Okay, so this inventory list actually also reflects things that we may have at the office or through our teleworking. We've got some stuff scattered around that way also, correct?
All of this inventory is housed with Jazzy right now. It's not split up anywhere. Everything is there at Jazzy.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then you talked a little bit about Red Man suits, but we have the Red Man and the Fist suits. Are they in reasonable shape? Are they something you want to outsource, or because I know the scheme of the training has changed as far as the hands-on? I mean, is this something that we're going to maintain in inventory? Or we're going to try to surplus those out?
Well, and what I would say, Craig, is at this point, I would hold on to them for a little bit. I'd rather hold on to them for a year or so and then see where we're going with the training. Depending on what happens with, we do DT and basic training still. Temple and Jazzy both have a basic scheduled. And as far as the conditions, and this was my initial assessment, and Tony, when we zipped these open and looked through to see if they were basically complete, they looked in fairly usable shape. So I think they're still serviceable. But we have them. I don't see any reason not to hold on to them, and we can always determine, like I said, later down the road if we still need them.
Okay, because they have pretty good value. The reason I know that here at Venango, we actually purchased 6 of those, and I've had them over 10 years, and they've been used a lot. And they still, other than a little bit of sewing here and there, we've been able to maintain them, and they're still in pretty decent shape. But if we do surplus them, they are worth a fair amount of money because the price of a new Fist suit is up there. I mean, they've really increased from what it was when we purchased them. And so I understand, what you're thinking on that. Hey, one other question, and I'll cut on the inventory. On these cat tourniquets, I see where you transferred a bunch to Temple. And Jazzy has some. Are those going to be given out for the basic training program, or the new constables coming in? Are they getting those tourniquets, or what's your plans with those?
Correct. So these were some leftovers when we did the Stop the Bleed. And at the time, Ted Mellors at Penn State Fayette was able to get one cat tourniquet for each constable through the UPMC, their program, Stop the Bleed. That cost the program nothing. Of course, during the Stop the Bleed training, every constable was given one. And there was, I think, about 58 or 60 we found. So we've split those up. So when Temple and Jazzy run their basic trainings, they will give each constable who completes the training a brand new cat tourniquet.
Okay. I appreciate that. And like I said, I appreciate your indulgence with me on this inventory thing. But it was just something that, it's been, like you said, I was on the program from 2000, 2003, and I'm just kind of curious where we actually did stand with equipment, what all we had, and, what the shape of it was and what your plans was as far as outsourcing. So I appreciate that update. And then, is this something, this inventory list, do you review this every year, or how you project how you're going to go with this?
Correct. So there's kind of two things. So as we go through a training year, let's say a training provider identifies a need, for a piece of equipment, they got to replace something or whatever. They bring it up to staff and we see, can we cross level equipment? Is it it might be something simple. And so if it's purchased, it's added on to the inventory. And then, like I said, every September, the schools have to update those inventories. And I will say, for the most part, these inventories were pretty accurate. Like I said, there were probably more things that we're not sure where that equipment came from. They might have come from somebody's Act 120. And, there were things, like I said, we knew we didn't purchase through the program. So,
Okay, great. And like I said, I hope Dean realizes that as a board member, I'd rather see the stuff used than just sit in a shelf someplace. So I hope Temple doesn't have any reservations. I mean, we're just 2 training providers now. I mean, if we want a more equitable distribution of the equipment, I think now's the time. So I just hope that, the things that we feel that are needed are actually used and not sitting on a shelf somewhere. And with that, I appreciate your indulgence, and I will end my discussion on this subject. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that concludes the discussion items, and we're going to move on to the informational items. 2021 training schedule update. Ms. Sherry Leffler.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to update the board on the 2021 training schedule. We have we opened up the schedule on January 19th or January 25th, I apologize. And since that time, we've had 922 online enrollments made into both Con Ed and annual firearms classes. So far, we have 6 individuals enrolled in the first basic training class in the Southeast. We are still coordinating with individual constables who have, registered for the SET system but haven't provided their appointment paperwork or election certificates, those types of things. And then we also have a list of individuals who have contacted us that were interested in training. So we are reaching out to all of these individuals to try to get this class as full as possible. It does start on Friday, March 5th. Nick Hartman will be in attendance for that training class, and I will be there for the first day as well. As far as basic firearms, we do have a basic firearms class that Penn State Jazzy is putting on for us in April to try to catch up individuals that were not able to get enrolled into a basic firearms class in 2019 and 2020. So those individuals are being contacted, directly by staff. Once we get their paperwork and their payments in, then we are enrolling them into the classes. So far in this, in the first basic firearms, we only have 4 right now enrolled in that class, but we do anticipate, more over the next couple of weeks. Also, we have had, since we released the PDF version of the 2021 training schedule, we have had several training facilities back out on us at the last minute. We released the schedule on Tuesday, the 19th, and by Thursday, we already had a training facility cancel on us. I've put notices out to the constable population that whatever was in the printed training schedule may not match what is in SET. So make sure that you are double checking those training locations. And then recently in the West, we had another issue where a training facility backed out on us again at the last moment. But Tony was able to, acquire another training facility for those same dates. So we didn't have to cancel those classes because both of those classes were full with 20 participants. So we're doing good with the 2021 training schedule. We had our first, Temple had their first Con Ed class this past weekend. It went very well. They have their first annual firearms qualification coming up actually this weekend. It will be on Sunday, February 14th. And staff will be out at that training class as well, just to make sure that everyone's adhering to the COVID protocols and that type of thing. Are there any questions from any of the board members on the 2021 training schedule?
Just basically, I'm just curious as to why last minute venues are backing out.
They are not allowing outside entities to use their facilities.
So I think sometimes, John, maybe the person who committed, to us. Wasn't aware that the hires were still holding to their COVID policy of not allowing outside entities, or maybe they committed and had discussions and changed their mind. This whole COVID issue is still a big factor in getting training locations.
Okay.
And that was also one of the things when the coordinators were developing the schedule in the fall of last year. We had to change facilities that we have used for, the last 20 years, because they were not allowing outside entities. So, there was a mad scramble to try to find training facilities. And then, once you get it publicized and then somebody cancels on you, it just creates more headaches. So, but we're working through every one of them. So we'll get it all worked out.
No doubt, doing a good job. Okay, Sherry, we'll move on to the training grievance update.
Okay. Normally at the end of normally the November board meetings, I do try to update the board on the training grievances that had been filed during that training year. And this is part of, the training grievance policy that the board approved, I believe it was in 2019. But just to give you, everybody can read, so I'm not going to go through this word for word. Basically, if there is evidence of, a discrepancy for basically like a no-show attendance, that kind of thing, I do check with the schools. I, ask for documentation from the constables. So there have been grievances that were filed for no-show attendances that have been overturned to an excused absence. So, for example, the first grievance that I referenced there in my write-up, that one I had requested additional documentation. It was never received. I closed the grievance out in January of last year because the individual constable then paid us the no-show payment. The second grievance there was filed also in 2019. That was for an individual constable who had, multiple failures. He was able to provide additional documentation. He was in a constable involved shooting. He did have PTSD. He was seeking therapy. Did provide a lot of documentation for staff. And we did the decision that was made by myself in conjunction with John as the manager of the bureau, that we would still require him to go back to a basic firearms course because of the multiple failures that he had prior, and because of the lapse in his certification. But we were going to allow him to attend that class for a lesser sum of $410. And that was based upon him paying for a failure class that he attended without paying. The third grievance that was filed in January of 2020, that was a no-show absence then that was changed to an excused absence due to the documentation and, information that was received by staff. The fourth grievance there was the grievance that we had previously discussed earlier in the meeting with Gary Winfrey, and that grievance decision will stand. The fifth grievance was filed by a former constable who had attended a annual firearms class and failed, and provided us with the payment for the failure payment for that class. That constable has since retired, or has resigned from office. And would be ineligible now to attend any constable training classes. So, per the training grievance policy that the board approved, I did have him file a training grievance requesting reimbursement of that failure payment. I have approved that request, and I have fiscal staff are working on the reimbursement for that failure payment. However, I did place a training restriction on that constable sets profile. In the instance, let's say, 10 years from now, he is elected or appointed as a constable again, comes back in, wants to get into another firearms class, he would still be responsible for that failure payment 10 years from now. But at this point in time, he has no, ambitions of getting back into office. So I felt confident in the decision to reimburse him for that failure payment. Are there any questions on the training grievance updates? Okay, hearing none, then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy to give you an update on some instructor transfers that we've had recently with the program. Tracy?
Thank you, Sherry. Again, as John had stated in the earlier portion of the meeting here, with Penn State Fayette not fulfilling their contract and then the program's decision to not renew IUP's contract, there's been a decision made by the program to allow the instructors who have been board certified for the training delivery coordinators or contractors to be used by the other contracts that are now in place. So on page 25 of the board packet, you can see that the program staff have decided that the following board certified instructors will be transferring to both Temple and or Penn State Jazzy, and will continue to provide instructional services for the constable population. Again, these instructors are currently board certified, and they will just be used by the new training coordinator or contractor, Penn State Jazzy, and also Temple. Do we have any questions or comments about the certified instructor transfers?
I'd just like to add here too. I failed to do this, but I do want to recognize Tony Mua, who has graciously been hired as the constable coordinator for Penn State Jazzy. I believe John alluded to this earlier, that effective on December 4th of 2020, we have partnered with Penn State Jazzy and their Justice and Safety Institute. To provide training delivery in the western part of the state for the constables program. Tony Mua has been hired as the coordinator. He has an extensive law enforcement background, and he previously worked with the constables program both as a board certified instructor and also as a curriculum development subject matter expert. So Tony will also be included in this listing of transfers. So he will be transferring as a board certified instructor for Penn State Fayette to Penn State Jazzy. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, Chair Bruno, I'll just go ahead and move on to the next informational item. At the
Yes, please.
November 2020 meeting, the board had asked for information on the online training. So I've provided an update to the board here. Out of the 1,185 eligible constables and deputy constables, we had 1,005 successfully complete the 4-hour online training subject last year, reacting to witness criminal behavior. The remaining 180 constables did not complete the subject, and I would say probably 90% of them never activated their Canvas accounts with Temple. Out of those 180, we had 11 that we have been formally informed that they have resigned from office. We had 52 of those 180 that did not renew their liability insurance in 2020. And then staff have talked to multiple individuals that have indicated that they would not be renewing their certifications for 2020 because their term of office will expire at the end of this year. And they would not be seeking another term. I think we're going to have a large turnover of new constables coming in for training in 2022, but we'll see how the year pans out. For the online subject, we had 18 first-time failures, and we had 5 second-time failures. So there were 4 of the 5 that failed the second time had to pay and retake that second course. The 5th individual just got in too late. There was no way that we could process a payment and get them enrolled into that second course by the deadline, which was December 4th. That person has now submitted their failure payment, and they will be now required to do the 12 hours for 2021. There are now 8, I have in this documentation 11 constables, but there's actually 8 now who did not provide a signed statement of understanding for the code of conduct that was implemented on January 1st of 2020. Of those 8, once we received that signed acknowledgement, Then we will approve their online grades from the 4-hour module last year, and we will have their 2021 training periods created in the system. Are there any questions or comments on that training update? Okay, then Tracy, I'll turn it over to you for the last informational item then.
Thank you, Sherry. The last informational item is the status of certifications. As of January 27th of this year, 2021, there were 964 constables and deputy constables who are currently active and certified. That means they have a valid term of office and have purchased their liability insurance and have completed the continuing education requirements or the basic training requirements. Of those, about 82% are also certified to carry a firearm in their performance of the constable duties. And since the inception of the program in 1996, 4,634 individuals have successfully completed the basic training or the waiver examination and were certified by the board. Are there any questions or comments with this status?
Hearing none from the board, I want to thank Sherry and Tracy and John for the excellent work you do in providing this information and presenting it. At this time, I would like to move to the public voice section. Each person who requested to comment prior to the meeting will be announced separately, I believe, by Sherry. Please make your comments to 2 minutes or less. If you have no public comment or questions, please indicate so.
John Bruno.
Yes.
This is Craig Westover. Hey, before you go into public voice, there was 2 quick things that I wanted to add, if that's acceptable to you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, first one is, and this will be kind of directed to Sherry. I see on 12/1 of 2020, I received a copy of a revised Act 49 Constables Training COVID screening that we're going to use at the classes. The one question that's not on there, and I don't know if it needs to be revised and added on, or if simply you want the schools to add it under comments, but I would like to see a running total of people being, if they've been vaccinated, whether they have actually taken the vaccine. I think it would be nice to be able to have a running total on, the constables as are coming through the training, if they have gotten vaccinated, especially if we have any issues after the class with anybody, getting exposed. What's your thoughts on that, Sherry?
This is John Fowl. I'll chime in. I think that's a good idea, Craig. Quite honestly, that form we developed, we kind of pirated the deputy sheriff COVID protocols because they got their residential academy up and running again last June. And they've been very successful. So we can add that in there. That question: have you completed your vaccinate? Have you been vaccinated? And it's just should be a yes or no. That's as far as I think I would take it.
Correct. Yeah, that sounds good. I think it'll be helpful for us anyways. At least we'll have a good track at the end of the year. And then if, like I said, we have a class where there's any issues afterwards, we can at least take a look and see who was vaccinated, who wasn't, or at least who reported it. So, and my second question, John, actually sort of also directed to you. I can't take credit for this question. My young enthusiastic Constable Alex Ferganis just texted me a question about the tourniquets being given out at basic training. But if we don't have stop the bleed in basic training, should we do that, or do we just accept the fact that we have these tourniquets to give away for free, and we're not going to require the stop the bleed, portion of the training in order to get the tourniquet? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, what I would do is when the schools give these tourniquets to these guys, we could provide them a resource. You can get stop the bleed training pretty much a lot of places now. For the most part, it tends to be free. A lot of hospitals, well, they're busy right now, but, between local community fire companies and EMTs and their stop the bleed training is still kind of widely available. But I just didn't want to sit on these tourniquets when we thought these guys coming in, that's something that they should carry and utilize. So, yes, we would encourage them to get the stop the bleed training.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just want to get that on the record, and I appreciate Alex texting me that question because I hadn't really even thought about that. So, like I said, the younger constables do have some good ideas from time to time. I appreciate it, John. Thank you.
One more thing
You're
I'm going to add. If we're going to, ask constables if they have been inoculated, we're going to have to ask them yes, no, or choose not to answer, because at the end of the day, it is a HIPAA issue, and there's no requirement that constables do, in fact, be vaccinated. So give them that
Sure,
third
we
option.
can. Sure, we'll put that in there, John.
Okay, moving on to public voice. Sherry, I'm going to turn that over to you because you know who exactly signed up for that.
And actually, John, it's Tracy, so I'll pass it on to Tracy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy.
That's okay. Thank you,
knew I
Chair
spoke
Bruno.
sooner or later. Yep.
The first constable that notified me that he would like to participate in the public voice is Constable Adrian Reist out of Montgomery County. Are you present, Constable Reist? No? Okay, the second one would be Constable Terry White out of York County. Constable White, are you present?
I am present.
Okay,
So,
the floor is yours.
okay, I have two things. I brought this up in the last meeting, and I don't think it was addressed as a follow-up. What is the board's stance on Section 7148, use of firearms, which says this board, with a review and approval of PCCD, shall establish standards for the certification and qualifications of constables and deputy constables to carry or use firearms in the performance of any duties. So this is a lot bigger than just certifying us for the courts, in my opinion. So I'd like to know the board's stance on that. The second question is related to the LEOSA analysis. You are really focused on retired constables. LEOSA also applies to current law enforcement, and PCCD staff has emailed, outside their organization saying no, they, meaning constables, are not covered under LEOSA. So I find it appalling that this board and PCCD has a position that constables are not law enforcement officers, if that is a position, because I believe that's what was said in this call, and that people are saying that to other entities outside of PCCD, impacting our ability to do our jobs. So I'd like to know the board's thoughts on both of those issues.
John, do you want to start with that, or?
Well, what I will say about, yes, you're correct. The act says any duties. Going back to the very beginning when the board created the firearms training program, and the board looked at it from the perspective, because at that time the act was not merged in with all the other constable statutes that as it is now. I think that occurred in 2009. It was kind of a standalone act, and the board looked at the 4 categories that the act specified we train them in: civil law, criminal law, and then it listed out some various other things, prisoner transport, and there's even other duties assigned by the MDJ or service of similar process. I can't remember the exact verbiage. So the board took the approach to the firearms training that the board was training and certifying constables to carry a firearm in the performance of those court-related duties. And so that has been the philosophy since. In the training, the basic training, the continuing education training, as well as the firearms, has always been focused around those court-related or judicial-related duties.
Okay. Mr. White. Yeah, I've been a constable going on 32 years, and I'll argue, all day long that we are in fact law enforcement officers because we do enforce the law. We have arrest powers. We service the minor judiciary, just like the deputy sheriff's service, the common police courts. We sort of mirror them. The issue becomes once again in a solid and fast, hard definition statutorily of what we are, something we do need to work on. And as it relates to LEOSA, the issue is once again we are not attached to any governmental agency. That is the problem. We're independent contractors. So that has to, I guess that change would have to be made federally. I'm not even sure how you would do that. You would, since it is a federal statute, and the language in the federal statute does in fact mention agency, I wouldn't even know where to begin to try to tie that together. I'm all for, like I said, having constables being able to, enjoy, the LEOSA Act. I think it's a tremendous act to me. The more people, the more good people that carry a firearm in society, the safer society is. But it's something that's going to have to be addressed and worked on to tighten up, as Ms. Sandifer had basically laid out to us. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. Tracy, you want to move on to the next public voice?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The next one was Constable Gary Winfrey. He had filed the grievance, and he wanted, I don't know if he wants to make any additional comments. He is out of York County. Constable Winfrey, are you present? Okay, and the last person, constable, who notified me that he would like to speak during public voice is Constable Ron Quinn out of Center County. Constable Quinn, the floor is yours if you're still on the meeting.
I'm still here. Thank you. Basically, I want to kind of piggyback with what Constable White was talking about there. And first, I'd like to ask Ms. Sanford, what statute are you referencing that stipulates that constables are not law enforcement officers, or what is the statute that you're using as a definition of what law enforcement officers are that you feel that we don't fall under?
Okay, let's be real clear. Just like I said at the start of my comments, this board is not empowered to state that constables are law enforcement officers. They're not empowered to state that constables are not. And there was nothing in what I said that said that constables are not law enforcement officers. You did not hear that. You may have thought you heard it, but you did not. My comments were about whether or not the board is empowered to decree that constables are law enforcement officers, and they are not. Sometimes we can get bogged down in semantics, and if you hear staff or someone, for example, say that,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you say you are not, you're talking about you're not authorized to make that statement, or you're not, or that we are not. I just wanted to get a clarification.
Constable Quinn. Okay, please let Ms. Sandifer finish what she's trying to say, and then respectively you can respond.
I just wanted to follow along, that's all.
Well, the board is not authorized to decree that constables are law enforcement officers.
Okay, thank you.
And if you extrapolate from that and you go off in different directions, I can't help you. I'm very clear in what I said, and it was based on what the statute that created this board said. The board is empowered to do education and training. There is nothing in the statute that says that this board has the authority to decree that constables are law enforcement officers. You did not hear me say that constables are not, because I speak as counsel to the board. The board has not stated that constables are not law enforcement officers. It is simply that they do not have the power to decree that constables are law enforcement officers.
Okay, what Ms. Sanford is saying is, in her heart of hearts, she might believe that we are. But there's nothing that she can hang her hat on in terms of what is said regarding the statute as it pertains to the creation of the board. So that's silent on that.
Okay, I understand that.
Okay. So what's your point?
Well, our point is that in other areas, particularly in the areas of working with our communities and attainment and comprehensive liability insurance and our relations with other law enforcement agencies, one of the things that they usually reflect back on is what this board is basically telling them when they inquired to you all as far as what is our classification? Are we law enforcement officers or not? And I understand what Ms. Sanford is saying as far as that you're not empowered to state that. But there have been cases in the past where that has not been the case, where the members of the board or in their offices have told other agencies that we are not law enforcement officers. I can understand the classification under LEOSA of not wanting to be able to be authorized to train under those auspices, but when it comes to basically classifying us and talking to us and teaching us our trade, basically it's been done a number of times in the classroom as well, that we are not classified as law enforcement officers. I'd like to get that, and I'm not alone in this. I think a lot of people would like to get that clarified, that we are law enforcement officers. We may only be trained by this board as far as court work and firearm usage, but it should not take away from the fact that our offices, our elected offices, just like a sheriff or anything else, is an actual law enforcement office, which we are law enforcement officers in.
Constable Quinn, do you think you're a law enforcement officer?
Absolutely.
So do I. I think I am as well.
Okay.
I think every constable, all 964 that have that are certified constables are in fact law enforcement officers. The problem is that once again, we do not have a working definition statutorily, and that is something that needs to get done. So what I recommend is that we get our heads together and come up with a definition, and that definition needs to be brought to the legislature and put forth and go through the process, whatever they do, and then there you are. Because
I agree that
if it walks like a duck and it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck.
Absolutely.
So we are law enforcement officers. We're trained as law enforcement officers. We do law enforcement work. We enforce the laws. But
exactly.
Once again, they're just hanging their hat on, the fact that there is no working definition. Am I correct in that, John Fowl?
Well, Chairman, I will say this. From the time the program started in '94, to now. I've said that over and over again, that constables need to get a definition, legislative definition, because that will determine all these other issues that have come up for the last 25 years. And again, that's not PCCD's role to get that definition or this board's. That is for whoever else out there to go to their legislators and to get that accomplished. I know the Special Court Judges Association they want a definition because, you know, in talking with them, they understand the importance of constables to the MDJ system, and they want a definition because it'll assist them in the performance of their work and getting their work done. So this has been an issue since the act was passed in '94.
I would just add that as far as what we're hearing in the classrooms, though, and the instructors, particularly from instructors who are non-constables, okay, that when the questions come up, that either the question basically is like, I cannot answer that, you know, or you can say, yes, you are law enforcement, whatever I would prefer basically they just kind of stay neutral on the issue. But at the very least, they should not tell us that we are not law enforcement officers. And I would appreciate that if that could just be mentioned to the instructors that we have out there already and stuff.
Okay, so noted. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and maybe start this process. I would like Alex Forganis and Greg Westover to form a small committee of such constables, and maybe we can reach out to our board member here, who's a state police major, get together and get the ball rolling on a definition. Does anybody have an objection to that request that I just made?
I don't have an objection. Oh, sorry, can I? Is this still?
Who is that? Who's speaking,
this is
please?
Constable Dave Canella, Vice President of the PAFOC.
Okay.
I don't think was still debated. I mean, in 1990, RE Act 147, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court already decided that we're not only law enforcement but police officers. And Commonwealth versus Gladfelter also reiterated the same thing. So I mean, this.
All right.
This
So
actually,
we have a starting point there. That's good. So
and I would back that motion up also, as long as I could be one of the members of that little committee as well.
Well, it's not a motion. It's I don't know if I need to put it in form of a motion, Sherry, but we keep going round and round. So I'm going to, as the chairman, I'm going to say we get this done. So Major, do you have any hesitation in helping us with this?
I'd be glad to talk to you about it. I want to see where it's going. Quite honestly, I think this comes back to needing a legislative fix. I don't think it matters what any of our opinions are, and certainly I agree that the board is not in a position to make the determination one way or the other. So I really think ultimately it comes back to approaching
right. We're talking about language, Major, and helping us come up with a good definition, because I think we could all agree that the work that we do is law enforcement related. Okay,
Chairman
Right.
Bruno.
So yes,
this is John Fowl. What I would suggest is that constables and as an association or whatever, reach out to the special court judges, because as I've said, they've been trying to kick around and develop a definition for about 1.5 years now. They have a committee on constable, they call it Committee on Constable Relations, I believe, And that has been one of the principal issues they've been discussing for a year and a half. So I would
Okay,
suggest reaching out to them to work together.
okay. But I would still like to have our own committee. Maybe we can call it our own committee on constable relations. I would like
Chair,
Craig and Alex to be
Chair
involved.
Bruno, before you go on, if I could interject, I'd like to get Deborah's opinion on this. Is this something that is a purview of the board to come up with a definition using board members?
This is something that I will speak with the board about offline.
Okay.
I'm in the process of typing up a communication now.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. Moving on, is there any more public voice?
Yes.
Yes, if I'm, yes, Mr. Chairman. If I may, my name's Ron Clever. I live in Lehigh County. I was elected a constable in the 1990s. I'm an attorney since the 1980s. And I have to echo what Terry White said and what Ron Quinn said. Every constable has heard an instructor say in class, quote, "You guys are not law enforcement officers," end quote. So while it's wonderful and correct that Attorney Sandifer says that the board doesn't make a statement on that, it's incorrect because the board is making a statement on that every time an instructor flaps their mouth and says those wrong words. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled that a constable is a peace officer. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled that a constable is a police officer. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled that a constable is a law enforcement officer. Numerous statutes back that up. Numerous rules back that up. AOPC's own procedures back that up. And the constable is a police officer, a peace officer, and a law enforcement officer. The other major problem is where the PCCD, again, shouldn't make a statement, just as Attorney Sandifer says, but nevertheless does. They'll get a phone call from a police department in Springfield Township somewhere saying, "Can this constable do this?" And the staff answers that question. The staff should not be answering that question.
Okay, so noted. Moving on to any further discussion from the audience? Any other possible comments?
On what Attorney Clever just said, or more public comment?
Either or.
Well, I 100% agree with Attorney Clever. I would also like to bring. Are you done, Ron? I'm sorry.
Oh yes, Dave. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to also bring to the board's attention that the PAFOC initiated, along with the Attorney General Di Pasquale's office, a audit of the magisterial district judges in regards to the payment of constables, and it was published on January 15th, 2021, and as many as 20% to 42% of magisterial district judges unlawfully withhold money from constables. Some date back 15, 20 years to the tune of over $5 million. And I think that this should be at least included in training, that for the new guys, that even though that, I mean, you're training the law, even though it says that you're going to be paid within 30 days, somehow the magisterial district courts choose to follow their own set of guidelines and may not pay you for your work. I think they need to know that going in. And I mean, there's some constables that are owed $60,000. I'm sorry.
Continue, please.
And I think that, you know, this needs to be, I know that I was part of the work group for PCCD when we had the constable discussions and training issues. And we had talked about PCCD possibly drafting some kind of letter and sending it to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but they had no, I don't know, like stick to use per se. I mean, I think that they can use the Auditor General's report of the MDJ self-reporting that they are not following statute and guidelines. I mean, there's absolutely no reason why the law enforcement officers across this Commonwealth are putting their lives on the line potentially on a daily basis to retrieve monies and various other things for the courts, and the courts owe them in excess of $5 million. I mean, why?
And this is a report that's been released by the former Auditor General.
It was released January 15th, 2021.
Okay. Well, there's a new Auditor General.
No. De Pasquale didn't leave until the end of January. So there is a new current Auditor General, but he did it previous to him leaving. Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Well, perhaps
John,
Sherry,
but it's a huge.
Can we get a hold of that? Can we get a hold of that report for next time?
Yes, we can do that, Mr. Chair.
I will email it to Sherry as soon as we get off the phone.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it. Is there any other?
And
go ahead.
Secondly, there's an issue with constables who illegally received training, who were not eligible to receive training, who fraudulently accepted training and did training, should have to pay back any monies that the board spent to train them. There was approximately 10 Luzerne County constables who were illegally appointed and received training, some of which have already resigned. There was one in Columbia County. And I just don't think the board should have to swallow the monies when people were not actually even eligible to receive the training.
Well, I have no idea what you're talking about there. John, do you have any clue as to what he's alluding to?
This goes back to the issue of whether or not a constable who registers with the board for training is living in the borough ward he's appointed or elected. And as I've said before, we do not have the means nor the time to verify residency when we receive a court order appointing someone or an election certificate from a county saying this person was duly elected.
Well, we're not asking for that. We're asking for retroactive.
Bullshit.
After you learn that a person did not reside in the district or whatever and still receive training.
And after they've been removed from office because of that.
Right. And that for a period of, they could have been impostoring for multiple years and received hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of training at PCPD's expense, but was never eligible to receive it. We're not saying that it's your job to research it on the front end, but once you learn it on the back end, I think you should be eligible to collect those monies.
Well, that should be something I guess we table for another date. What do you think, John?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
We'll table that. Just note that we'll table that issue and revisit that for another date and time.
Okay, very well.
Okay. Any further discussion from the floor? Any other constables? Any other concerns? Any other statements? Hearing none, I would ask a motion to adjourn today's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Constable Westover makes that motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Bud fights.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye, Craig Westover.
Aye.
Aye, fight.
All right, John Bruno. Any nays? Hearing no nays, this meeting of February 11th has concluded. Our next meeting will be when, Sherry?
The next board meeting will be May 6th at 9 a.m. via Teams.
The 18th. Okay. All right, then, everybody, thank you for your participation. I think we got a lot done today. And, I think we do need to work on a definition, Constable. So, with that, everybody have a safe winter. And Ms. Sandifer, are we staying on the line, or how are we doing this?
We'll set up something at another time. I think that would be easier for us. I'm not the techno person though. Maybe I should leave that to the more technologically gifted people. If we could stay online and guarantee that we had a private attorney-client meeting,
right, exactly. I understand. Right. Yep. Okay, guys. John, Sherry, anything else?
I'm good. Thank you.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, everybody. We're adjourned. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.